The scene begins when the police have surrounded Kellerman's agents, Schofield and Burrow.
River State Penitentiary in Illinois. Anything else?
My name's Lincoln Burrows.
Because of you. But when the press get here, you can tell the truth.
They negotiate a strategy to get out of there. And they got it. Agent Kellerman put his hand out and said he's from the FBI, got Schofield and the Burrow. Hold the shot and start recording. They got out of there and took the cameraman hostage, finally.
I'm not going to tell you again. One more step and I drop him.
They managed to escape in a car and kidnap one of the cameramen. Agent Mahon has returned to the FBI office, and he asked if there was any news regarding the fugitive. Then they get a call that a TV station cameraman has been kidnapped by Schofield. Scene shifts to Schofield. They heard the news on the radio that the vice president was scheduled to be in Denver today. Then Schofield ordered the car to pull over. They arrived at an empty warehouse. The cameraman was ordered down, and they were going to do something about it. The scene moves to the Fox River. It looks like Bellick wakes up in the hospital. Bellick's face is full of wounds and bruises. He was beaten by the muscular man. There are other inmates there trying to mock Bellick. You were the one who tortured the prisoners, but now feel the consequences of what you have done. Schofield, Burrows, and Kellerman are up to something, and the cameraman overhears a bit of the conversation, which is 725 kilometers in 6 hours. Kellerman also prepared a cloth and said, "Are you ready? What will they do?" The scene shifts to Sucker. It looks like he is going on a public bus to Mexico, and he gets acquainted with an old man in Spanish. Sucker said he was going to Ixtapa, Mexico to pick up his girlfriend. The scene shifts to the madman who is looking for something in the trash. It turns out that he is looking for wood to build his boat so that he can reach the Netherlands. But suddenly a young underage came and asked the madman to buy alcoholic drinks at the supermarket. Finally, the madman agreed in exchange for buying food for his dog. The cameraman had returned to the office at the TV station and given a recording to his superiors. Back at the FBI office, Agent Mahon appears to be planning to arrest Schofield. Suddenly, the whole office was excited because there was a news broadcasting a Burrow, and Schofield was broadcasting a podcast. On the podcast, Burrow said, "I escaped from prison because I never killed the vice president's brother. Stedman killed himself last night at a cutback motel 49 miles from his hideout in Montana." The conversation was continued by Schofield. He said, "There is an organization that is the mastermind behind all this. They are hiding Stedman for 3 years, those who wanted my brother dead. They stole billions of dollars and killed dozens of innocent people. They work with the highest levels of government, including the President of the United States." Agent Kim, who heard this news, said, "Immediately transfer this issue before it spreads, but this has already been spread," said his subordinates. Agent Kim gets angry and says, "Start a natural fire in Florida. Make a story that goes viral that will shut down the news about Schofield at all costs." Scenes change. Sucker arrived in Mexico. The old man said goodbye. Sucker still had to stay on the bus to continue the journey. However, Sucker was kicked out of the bus because it turned out that Sucker was only riding for free. The father who saw this made an offer for Sucker to stay at his house temporarily. Back to the FBI office, who was listening to Schofield's podcast. Mahon's agent asked for the recording to be transcribed and find out what they saw, heard. Their clothes, basically any information. Schofield discusses the crimes of Agent Mahon, who killed Abruzzi, David, as well as Oscar Shales. But Agent Mahon responded casually. A madman came back from the supermarket and gave the shopping to the young man. The young man was curious what he was doing. The madman said that he would build a raft to get to the Netherlands. They were invited to see the raft. They were surprised by what the madman did. The woman seemed to be joking with a madman. Accidentally, the madman saw this woman's bruised hand and said it was my father's doing. The madman wanted to treat him, but instead frightened them both. They both left him. Back at Bellick, Sarah's doctor friend Katie comes to treat Bellick. And Bellick tries to seduce Katie and hopes for a romantic story. Schofield and Dr. Sarah over and over again. Bellick begs Katie, "Don't let me go back to the cell. Let me stay here. When night comes, leave the door open for me." Katie refused. The cameraman was interviewed by the FBI, and he said, "I heard Schofield say something about 720 km in 6 hours. but I don't know where they're going. Hearing this, Agent Mahan immediately investigated where they were going. He reports to Agent Kim. And it's 720 kilometers from where Schofield is. There is a town called Denver, and the president is due to make a speech that very afternoon. There was news on the radio broadcasting that the terrorist threat was increasing. That's the news that was created to drown out Schofield's podcast. But Schofield says it'll be a while until the podcast works. It's our last attempt to reach him. If anyone finds out we caught him, it will all be over. Who are they really talking about? Back at the office, Agent Mahan's underlings say we have to evacuate the president lest he be killed by Schofield. But Agent Mahan still wants to make the president bait. And no one should argue against his plan. Agent Mahan said prepare a recording of Schofield's podcast. I'll look into it more closely. The scene shifts. Sucker is having dinner with an old man who helps her. It looks like Sucker is being treated very well there. But not with Sucker. He saw that there was an old man's car key there and immediately stole his car. Back at the office, the FBI is slowly poring over Schofield's podcast recordings. They bring in experts who can read body language movements. Burrow looks to the top right while saying he didn't kill Stedman. Agent Mahan says he's lying. Burrow crossed his arms. It meant he was protecting himself. Not confident with that sentence. He swallowed. That means his throat is dry. It means he is lying. Back to the conversation when Schofield was still abducting the cameramen. So they apparently made a plan to confuse the FBI. They were telling the truth but made it look like they were lying. And vice versa. Agent Mahan realized it was Schofield's hand that gave him a code. Flashback. It turns out that Schofield deliberately created a confusing fake code. The Morse code he made by hand means the water is warm. That code means nothing. Agent Mahan realizes that they are playing with the FBI with fake codes. Agent Mahan wakes up knowing they're with Kellerman. Dr. Sarah, on the other hand, watches Schofield's tape over and over and realizes something. FBI agents realized that it turned out that Schofield was not doing that to clarify the Stedman matter, but to give a message to Dr. Sarah. Sucker fled with an old man's car. But unfortunately his actions were caught by the police. He was arrested and returned to the old man, but the father said to the police that he was borrowing my car. And I forgot to give him pocket money. Sucker was touched by the kindness of the old man who did not report it. Even though Sucker had already taken his car away, Sucker wants to say something. But the father only says find your lover and then find your happiness. Back to the FBI office. They investigated Dr. Sarah's curriculum vitae. Agent Mahan had an idea and immediately left the office. The scene changes. Burrow picks up today's newspaper. And there's news that the janitor was found dead in a Montana hotel room. So Stedman's suicide was dismissed as a janitor by the media. Burrow and Schofield had a one-on-one talk. And said that what if Kellerman was actually just using us to find Dr. Sarah and get the keys? Schofield was confused. Returning to the madman, he followed the young girl to his house. The young girl said goodbye to her boyfriend and entered the house. But his father, who was waiting for him, was rude to him. The madman who knew about it came in and beat the father to death. On the other hand, it turns out that Kellerman came to the hospital and asked Katie about the transcript of Schofield's podcast. As a friend of Sarah's doctor, maybe Katie knows the codes that are there. But Katie said she didn't know anything. Kellerman is now asking about this to Bellick. Bellick said, I will answer it if you want to transfer me to solitary confinement so that I will not be disturbed again. Kellerman agreed. Bellick tried to research the message, and apparently Bellick managed to crack the code. Bellick knows Dr. Sarah likes to read Alcoholic Anonymous books, and it turns out that the podcast's words match what's in the book, and there is their meeting place, namely in the Hospital of St. Thomas.
By now you have found your safe haven to help others.
The scene changes. It's true that Schofield is in the burrow pessimistic that Dr. Sarah will understand the meaning of her message, but there is a voice from the source of the information that Michael was called with a code Michael Crane. Schofield came to his senses and immediately picked up the phone. Dr. Sarah was right there, and explained that Dr. Sarah didn't leave her at GILLA. She was being held captive by someone who wanted to find something that belonged to the governor. Schofield also asked what item your father gave him. It was a key. Schofield said, let's find out together.
It's just a key.
Kellerman got a call and it turned out to be from the president's mother. The president's mother said sorry and she wanted Agent Kellerman to come back and we fixed this. Agent Kellerman was up to something. Kellerman, who was still half-hearted, took Schofield and Burrow away. Where would Kellerman take his side? The scene shows Dr. Sarah arriving at a station and finally she meets Schofield. They hug there. Agent Kellerman, on the other hand, gets a call from the president's mother asking him to return to Chicago and hand over Schofield and Burrow. But Kellerman still has doubts about the president's words. Sarah shows Schofield the key. And Schofield tells us that someone is working with us. And Sarah's doctor is surprised to see that person. Scene shifts to Teabag sleeping in the same bed with Sushi. Sushi says you have to hide because a neighbor will come today. If you are here, then you will be reported. If I don't have the guest, he will notice something is wrong. I'm worried for you, Teabag. But Teabag says you're bullshit, I will handle it. The Teabag came out. Back at the station, finally the three of them approached Kellerman. Immediately Schofield strangled Kellerman and said, you didn't tell me you had let Sarah's doctor die. But Kellerman said, I knew what the key was, which was the Rice Cigar Club in Chicago. Scene shifts to the FBI office. Agents beg to order Schofield's photos to be posted all over the place to buy gas. Then the agent asks to get a news about the whereabouts of the madman who has killed a citizen. The agent begs not to be interested in chasing the madman, but he gets a call from Agent Kim ordering him to kill the madman, because the madman was Schofield's former cellmate. Anyone related to Schofield must be killed. Back at the station, Agent Kellerman told officers he was a fugitive FBI agent and asked to clear a carriage to put this fugitive there. Burrow walked over to Sarah and said we'd use Kellerman and dump him if he felt it wasn't needed. The train carriages were emptied and other passengers were transferred to other carriages. Sarah and Burrow finally got into the train. Back at Fox River, the agent begs to come to Bellick and offer him an offer. That Bellick will be released from prison, but on the condition that Bellick must go after Schofield, Burrow and the other inmates, without an arrest warrant, without any official permission. You just work for me. Finally, Bellick agreed. Back to Teabag. Guests from Sushi come and the family act like nothing happened. Jack tries to fight back and says, I have a new bike in the garage, would you like to have a look? But Jack was stopped by a Teabag and threatened with a gun in his pocket. Jack did not even do the action. Back on the train, Dr. Sarah appears traumatized by Agent Kellerman and tries to avenge him. Dr. Sarah asks Schofield to get a glass of water. Then Dr. Sarah pretends to walk backwards and she strangles Kellerman, but the action is stopped by Burrows and Schofield. The train attendant came and asked if everything was okay. Should I call the police? Kellerman replies, leave this to the FBI. Your job is just to check passenger tickets. Don't interfere in my business. Kellerman was annoyed with Dr. Sarah and tried to beat him, but his action was prevented by the Burrow. Back at Fox River, it appears that Bellick has now been released and he is given the facility of a car complete with a gun and a false identity as an agent. Back to the Teabag. The guest finally said goodbye and said to Susie, don't forget that you are the host of this week's social gathering. The guest left. Teabag says we can't go on like this. If many guests come to the house, then I will be caught. Pack your things, we're moving out of here right now, and they're off. The scene shifts to Franklin. It appears that his son, Diddy, looks very lethargic. He has no appetite because he is sick. Finally, he threw up in the toilet. Franklin carried him and was about to take him to the doctor. But suddenly he was surprised because there was a robbery that took place there. Someone pointed a gun at the people there. Back on the train, Schofield is worried about Dr. Sarah. He locks himself in the toilet. Schofield goes back to his seat and says to the Burrow, although we don't know what's going on at the Rice Cigar Club yet, we have to find out. Kellerman went behind and called the president's mother and said I was on my way to Chicago. We'd have a chat there. Kellerman is still confused about who to side with. Back at Franklin, the robber asked everyone there to give all the money and put it in a plastic bag. But there was a man who resisted. He was beaten until he fell. Franklin tries to calm the robber and says, I know you really don't want to hurt anyone. Better this way. Now lock the door and signal that the shop is closed. No people near the window. All go to the other side. The man seemed to agree. Back on the train, Schofield trying to accompany Dr. Sarah. Dr. Sarah said that there are 2 reasons I'm still alive. The first is that I want revenge on my father's killers, and the second is you, Schofield. So you know what happened. Suddenly Sarah and Schofield's action had to be stopped by a train that suddenly braked suddenly. Burrow checked out. And it turned out to be the result of the police blockade. They were looking for a way out of there. The Burrow climbed onto the roof of the train and into the driver's room and pointed a gun so as not to stop the train and increase speed. Finally, the police car was hit by him and they managed to escape. Bellick went to the house of the teenage woman whose father was killed by the madman and he interrogated her. The woman was happy that the madman had killed her evil father and gave clues about the madman's whereabouts. Bellick also reported to the agent begging that he found traces of the madman. Finally, the agent Begg was after him, returning to Franklin. He also collected Sandra's valuables there and gave them to the robber. But the robber said, all of you should go to the back and wait till the police come. Franklin said, I am a fugitive, I can't do that. Because I could be caught, my daughter was sick, I had to take her immediately to the doctor. Finally, the robber understood and allowed Franklin and his son to go, but the robber instead held the woman there. Seeing this, Franklin did not stay silent and tried to fight the robber. Finally, the robber was defeated. But unfortunately, the police came. When the police came in, he asked who made the robbers like this. One of the hostages there confessed he had done it to hide that Franklin was there. Franklin escapes through the back door with the help of the woman he saves. Back to the madman. He was surprised because the Bellick was already there. He ran away and the Bellick chased him. On the train, Schofield and his friends were seen jumping from the train. The driver reported this to the police. They were also seen running towards the forest. The police were also chasing them. They were arrested, but surprisingly it turned out that it wasn't Scoville and his friends. They were just train employees who were forced to follow Schofield's orders to run without looking back. And Schofield arrived at the train station safely. Back to the madman. He seems to have climbed to a high place to avoid being chased by Bellick, and now he is trapped up there. Bellick calls agent please to come there. Schofield trying to find a car that could be stolen. On the one hand, Kellerman called the president's mother and said, did you send the cops? Kellerman, who is increasingly disbelieving, testing the president's mother, hears a question that is, where do we celebrate my 35th birthday? The president's mother couldn't answer it, and it turned out that the woman behind the phone was just a woman ordered by Agent Kim, who changed her voice to the president's voice. Agent Kim was upset because he was found out. They also get the car and run away from there. Besides, the agent begged to arrive at the crime scene and he tries to go upstairs. Arriving at the top, he tries to talk to the madman. The madman said, I have a dream to go to the Netherlands. The agent please say that everything is the way out. Scene changes. Schofield arrives at the Rice Cigar Club. And Kellerman says there is a private locker for each club member there. Since I'm not a fugitive, so hand over the key and let me take it. But Schofield was reluctant to give it, and Sarah's doctor tried to get into the club. Agent please fool the madman, and the madman says I want to go and decides to jump from there. And in the end, the madman dies. To be continued. After Sarah entered the club and she went into the locker room to take the flash disc recording. But a worker there who knew Sarah's doctor called her. Sarah, who felt something was wrong and immediately left there. They fled through the back door, and it turns out the police have arrived. They're moved. Mahan's agent called his son and made sure he was okay and apologized for not being able to protect him all the time. Even now, Mahan's agent has not been able to visit his son in person. Then he got the news that his son Franklin was sick and was looking for a hospital. Got the news that Franklin's son, Mahan's agent, was trying to find him. Dan directed the police to Franklin, who was looking for a house, and immediately ordered that Franklin's photo be sent to the entire local hospital. Sarah went back to the car and said, we can't take it ourselves, but we can ask for help. Turns out there is one club member who can help, namely the former warden Fox River Henry Pop. He is a member of the Rice Cigar Club. They came to the house. And how surprised he was when he saw Sarah's doctor, who came to her house asking for Pop's time to tell something, but Pop didn't want to hear the story. The neurosurgeon showed himself, and Poe was even more surprised why he was angry, because he didn't want to have anything to do with Schofield anymore. Plus, Schofield is a fugitive. Explained he came to ask for Pop help, so that those in the Rice Cigar Club became more and more displeased and chased them away. But Sarah's doctor showed him the key given to him by his father. Sin changed to Tibet, planning to take Susie and her child somewhere, and they arrived at an old house which turned out to be Tibet's house. Arrived to go to the airport to meet Maricruz had to be delayed because his car broke down, but he was lucky because there was a man who wanted to give him a ride. It turned out to be communicating with a large HT, and Suckery asked what is it, explains, and that he is an airport security officer, and said American fugitives flew here. Yes, that explains that he is an airport security officer. Said the American fugitive flew to catch him. Sucker was suddenly shocked and nervous, afraid of being caught. Franklin arrived at the hospital. He registered his child there because his kidney disease had relapsed. The woman and asked for Franklin's insurance card or identity card, but Franklin didn't have it. The woman called her boss, expressing her disappointment so far because she had tried back at Franklin. The hospital superior explained that you can't register at the hospital without clear personal data, and said, "Are you going to wait until my son dies and then give help to women?" Answered that the hospital was not a shelter for the poor. Franklin was hurt and left. It turned out that the officer already knew that Marriage was a fugitive.
This is a hospital.
Just say to me.
Franklin was shocked when he saw Mahon's agent was already outside, and he ran inside to find another way out, get on the bus, but for Mahon to point his gun. Franklin raises his hand, but his son doesn't want to let go. It's hard to catch him and goes to his house.
Okay.
No, sweetie, you gotta let him go, honey.
Okay, get down.
Scovel, but Scoopy, who betrayed him, Scorpio, betrayed him even though he couldn't let the fugitive come to his house. He finally called the police, but Scoopy prevented it by pointing a gun. In the end, Water Nyapo was forced to listen to what Scorpio. Scovel said that his brother was innocent, but Pop is ignorant about it, and you talk with a gun in your hand, give the gun and tell Pop to point at a gun at him. Pop Koplo says it's the key to the freedom of an innocent man. The key is one that can prove Burak innocence. But Pop says, I'm not, I have bad business. I don't care to say there is something you can offer to change your mind, whether it be a change.
We'll find out. That's all I ask.
And I've come to one conclusion.
Duck enters the house, and the house looks very messy. Then he takes a book in the hole in the wall, reads it. He also remembers his past looks small, which insulted by his father's friend because of I descent mother who is autistic. Her father said no, it was smart and proved it. Yes, ordered by. Mention 10 synonyms of the word destroy, and arrive small can answer it easily.
What do you intend to do with us?
Say we will, and are in the building opposite the Rice Cigar Club. They will watch Scovel's movements from above. The mirror said, if we fail today, we will be dragged by a black hole to get information that Dr. Sarah was seen in Chicago at the Fun Club. And Kim immediately ordered his men to prepare the Sukhoi jet to arrive at the airport. And he said goodbye to the man who gave him a ride. When Sucker left, the man was told that there was a fugitive who was on the run wandering around, and was surprised to see the fugitive who was the one who got into his car earlier on the other side. They and his brother didn't go back to the United States, and how happy it was to recruit when Sucker came to him and liked to ask him to run away. Quite managed escape, and they were in Paddle's group of Rice. This Pop wants to help Scorpio and tells him to get the object even though the doctor is down. Sarah collects her promise to Scorpio while in prison, who invites him to have dinner together, promises that after this is over we will do it. Go inside and be greeted with by the guard there. He went into the locker room and opened the governor's locker. He took a box and there was a flash disk there. He immediately went and borrowed a laptop from the person there. Returned to Type X. He cleaned up his house and ordered the children to do the same with him. Susie refused, and the children were put in the room, saying his sincerity that he really loved Susan. Returned my love, said I couldn't sleep. I was very disappointed. In the end, Susie was locked up there and didn't see anyone. The axe there came to a small clinic and gave his son to be examined by a doctor. There changed to the club, out of the club, and what was surprising was the team agent came there and greeted Pop Agent Carmen, and Bad immediately came to them, said I will search you, and threatened him with a gun. Immediately Scoopy stepped on the gas and hit the agent. Kim Pop was ordered to enter. Buru came and beat him even though he got into the car followed by a garment agent, but the Dr. Sarah locked the car. They too. Agent Carmen turned to Tibet, who saw that there was cotton on her side. She opened the sushi place and her child was held captive. It was a police officer. The police said that someone who called you was being held here, but it turned out that it was not the one who called the police. He seemed sad because he had to leave them. $5 million bills or thin bottom means nothing anymore when hurt and love affairs go back to Franklin. The doctor told him kidney failure and can't be treated only in this small clinic. You have to take him to the hospital, but the doctor will put a catheter first. Franklin refuses it and leaves from there. It arrived at Pop's house. Something was there. Apparently Scoopy just admitted he made an agreement with the VOC that he would turn himself into the police if Pop managed to bring Flash. The teacher scolded Scoville's actions, but Pop changed his mind and said, "I've heard the recording." Believed that teacher innocent. Finally told Scoville to immediately go back to Franklin. He seemed sad to see his son who was getting worse. And finally he called Mahan and said, "I would give myself up on one condition: free my wife and take care of my son." Mahan agent refused it. Often I tried to get through it by giving something. Finally Dippin was hospitalized and often said that he would give up. Scoville in return Franklin was taken to jail. Finally Dippin was treated in hospital. Liver said that your wife had been released and Franklin said that he would keep his promise. He would hand over Scoville in return. Franklin returned to Scoville. They tried to listen to the contents of the recording from the Flash and was.
You think it's a conversation?
Let's do it.
The scene shows Schofield and his friends playing the recorded contents of the flash disk, and they are surprised by the recording.
Yeah.
Bellick came to the FBI office and demanded a reward for capturing the madman. But the agent begged him to refuse, because he had rashly appeared at the FBI office. "Agent, please say you will get your money if you play with me secretly, and you have to go to Mexico to chase Sucker."
And if you ever...
Burrow said if the tape given to the media was just an ordinary tape, we had to think of a way to make it useful. The scene changes to Kellerman. It looks like he is buying a sniper. What is the sniper for? The agent asks to doubt Franklin, who hasn't been able to find out about Schofield's whereabouts. Franklin only uses the website that Schofield gave to Sucker to communicate. The agent begs to belittle Franklin. They argue and end that Franklin promised to find Schofield, but he needed time. Back at the Burrow, he gave a number to Schofield. It was a confidant of his late father named Cooper Green. Schofield called him and told him, "You must know about the tape. If you want to know what's in it, go to the mammoth statue in the garden."
I know what happened to her.
Sarah comes to her father's grave and meets Bruce's father's friend. There Bruce says it's just a misunderstanding. I didn't kill his father. And Bruce explained what really happened.
Father's expense.
Bellick came to the prison, and he came to see Sanchez again and offered him a luxurious prison if he would tell where Sucker was.
Out near out. And that's your future. That can key minimum.
Sucker comes to her aunt's house in Estafa, Mexico, and looks like they are very happy. Teabag comes to someone's office and says we have similar faces. The man doesn't understand what he means. Teabag immediately beat the man to death. What does it mean? The scene shifts to Cooper Green, a confidant of Schofield's father. He's already at the mammoth statue in the park, and he picks up a payphone that rings there. It's a Burrow. Burrow ordered to take off his coat and throw it in the trash. The man refused, but Burrow said, "Follow our orders if you want to hear the audio." Then the man was ordered to go to the other side of the park in 4 minutes. The man ran, and there were 2 spies following him. He got to the next payphone and he was ordered back into the pool. The spy said they would soak the mic if we bugged them. A drenched Cooper Green gets a cell phone from a small child and is ordered to go inside the museum. The spy turns out to be Agent Kim's men.
See the building across from you?
Many times, Mr. Green. We need to make sure that this thing goes down right.
Agent Kim orders Agent Please to go to the park, and he also orders Franklin to be killed as soon as possible.
What I do need is a death with...
The Agent Please came into Franklin's room and said, "I've canceled our agreement. Now I don't need you anymore. Schofield will soon be caught, and it's not because of your help. Agent, please make an offer. If you want your wife to remain free and your child still in care, you have to fulfill my request. I will send a package and you have to wear it." Franklin asked what was in the package. "Agent, please leave from there." Back to Cooper Green. He arrived at a museum and down the street there,
Take the stairs.
as directed by the Burrow, and he arrived at a basement where Schofield was.
Go through the white.
On the other hand, Dr. Sarah is invited by Bruce to meet someone, and it turns out to be the real Cooper Green. Dr. Sarah immediately called Burrow and told him about it.
The man that Michael's with right now is not Cooper.
Burrow ran to Schofield's place. Schofield asked about how this tape can prove Burrow's innocence, and the fake Cooper Green soon convinced him. When the Burrow arrived, Schofield wasn't there and Schofield was already outside. Schofield also tested several questions on the person. Because the Green Cooper did not succeed in answering Schofield's question, Schofield immediately beat the fake Green Cooper and Brown came. The scene changes to a tea bag. He is at the airport and is about to go to Bangkok. He has a passport in the name of someone else there. So the man who was hit at the beginning of the episode was a person whose face was similar to a tea bag, so he disguised himself as that person. Teabag is notified that the flight will transit first to Mexico, and the Teabag was ordered to put his bag of millions of dollars in the plane's baggage. He was worried about the bag. Agent Kellerman met up with his long-lost sister, and Agent Kellerman apologized for what had happened so far, and Kellerman said goodbye. Agent, please find Green Cooper awake from his stupor and report to Agent Kim. Agent, please wonder why did Burrow and Schofield bother to do something like this? Why don't they just run away and disappear? Agent Mahon realizes that maybe the Burrow is innocent and Agent Kim is just covering it up. Agent Mahon can only follow Agent Kim's orders. Schofield and Burrow return to the hotel and Dr. Sarah comes with the real Green Cooper.
Schofield. Cooper Green.
Franklin's prison got a package, and it turned out to be a rope. He was also surprised that Franklin was ordered by Mahon's agent to commit suicide. Bellick is also on a plane to Mexico to catch Sucker, and it turns out that she is on the same plane with Teabag.
Freshen me up when you get it.
Franklin's wife visited her husband, and Franklin said that I love you very much, and Diddy.
Why?
Say my apologies to Diddy. Franklin's wife left. The scene changes to where the president is about to give his speech. Agent Kellerman takes his sniper and kills someone there. Agent Mahon investigates what really happened. He finds out that the Burrow is calling and watching him from somewhere, and he knows it's the hotel across the park. Back at the hotel, Green Cooper researched the tape, and to his dismay to find that the tape did not have the date the recording was made. There is only the date the tape was copied. So the conclusion is that the tape cannot prove that the Stammet is still alive. When the Burrow was in prison, the tape was useless. The agent please enter the hotel and ask the whereabouts of the doctor for advice, and he immediately goes to his room. Green Cooper had an idea. What if you threaten the president with this tape so you can pardon Burrow's innocence? Schofield agrees and will carry out the plan.
I think she'll sign it with her own hand.
Returning to prison, Franklin finally decided to hang himself. And Franklin's actions were caught by the warden there. He was saved. Back to the hotel, Green Cooper was ordered to go home. Schofield said, we will go to the president's speech, which is only 10 minutes away. Schofield asked Sarah's doctor that we'd meet at the park at 15:15. And they left. Agent Mahon arrived on the floor and entered the room. Dr. Sarah was surprised and immediately hid. Agent Mahon saw that there was a charger that was left behind. He knew there were still people inside. The agent begged to pretend to leave. The Dr. Sarah, who was tricked, finally got out from under her bed, and the agent begged to point a gun at him. Mahon's agent also interrogates Sarah's doctor, but Sarah's doctor is reluctant to reveal Schofield's whereabouts. Back to the airport, finally the tea bag arrived in Mexico and took the bag containing the money there. But how surprised he was when he saw there was a Bellic there, and he immediately turned around. But his bag was still there. He has to go to the back to get his bag quickly. He takes it, but he is reprimanded by the officer. And they fight. The tea bag managed to make the officer faint. But unfortunately, the backpack went back inside with the officer. Teabag immediately ran away from there. Scene changes. Franklin tells the warden that I'm not stressed or crazy. Just my family is in danger. Franklin begged the warden to be allowed to call. Franklin also called the FBI office and wanted to speak to Agent Mahon, but the agent Beg was not in the office and was received by his colleague, Agent Miller. Franklin also said, "Leave my message to Beg that I will do it. Don't hurt my family." Finally, Agent Miller went and investigated the case.
Don't hurt them.
The scene moves to the Burrow. He comes to his old friend's place and asks him for help to fulfill the paper message that is there right now. And Burrow's friends will too. Back to the place where the president's speech. Finally, the president arrived at the location and Agent Kellerman was ready to shoot him. The president came down and shook hands with some people there. Apparently there was Scoville there who invited the president to shake hands. He was also arrested by the guards there. But it turns out that Schofield gave a message that says we have the recording. Schofield is taken to the kitchen below. And it turns out that Kim's agent is there. Agent Kim orders the other guards to leave this place. Schofield says, "I want to speak to the president." Of course he wants to. Agent Kim doubts that and says it's impossible for you to meet the president. Kim, agent, the question is, where is your brother at? But Schofield was reluctant to answer. Schofield was finally beaten until he was injured. Scene shifts to Sucker. He gets news on the news that Teabag is seen at the airport. Teabag is fighting and looks like he wants to steal a bag. Sucker, who knows that the Teabag is carrying $5 million, finally immediately follows to the airport to hunt for the treasure. Back to Schofield. He seems to have slumped, weakly beaten by Agent Kim, but still Schofield is reluctant to say where the Burrow is. And suddenly the president came to talk to Schofield alone. Agent Kim didn't agree, but the president insisted he get out of the room. President says, "I'm not sure what tape you are talking about." He wants to listen first. Schofield said the tape contained a conversation between you and your brother after your brother was pronounced murdered by Burrow. The recording is copied and spread over 20 different places. You can choose to listen to it by phone or through the media. Sucker returns to his house, and to his surprise it turns out that Bellic is already there. Bellic points his gun at Sucker. Furthermore,
Where are they? Mighty girls? Hey. Minute. Which means trouble. Yeah.
the president also called the Burrow, and Burrow played the recording. It was true that the recording contained a conversation about the stomach complaining about having to hide until the Burrow was executed. The president was melted and asked how the process of his death stomach. Schofield replied he committed suicide by his own decision. Now what is your decision, President?
Was it quick?
Agent Miller comes to Franklin and says, "Confess what the agent is asking you to do. I guarantee your life will be safe." Franklin was confused there too. Bellic finally catches Sucker and will take her back to Fox River. Bellic says he will get a $100,000 reward, but Sucker offers something bigger. He says he knows the whereabouts of the $5 million bill. The Teabag is in this city. Back to Schofield. The president said, "What do you want?" Schofield said, "First, remove my handcuffs. Second, I will leave here unattended. And lastly, I want pardon for me and my brother. Clear our names from all evil today." Obviously, the president doesn't agree with that. Schofield bluffs, "You have to go up to the podium and say right now to the media, grant the pardon. This is not a negotiation, this is an order." The president came out of the room and said to release Schofield. Agent Kim did not agree with him. Plus, the president said he would grant clemency to them. But the president said to Agent Kim that I have the power and authority here. In the end, Schofield was released, and it was confirmed that none of Kim's agents had followed him. Back at the Burrows, his best friend came and bought a transport ticket for 3 people. Schofield arrived at the meeting place between him and Dr. Sarah, but he was worried because Sarah's doctor didn't come.
Yeah, how's 7 racing?
Back at the hotel, Dr. Sarah's cell phone rang and the agent begged to try to snatch the cell phone. But Dr. Sarah took the opportunity to take the gun. The agent begged and pointed the gun. Finally, Dr. Sarah was free from there. But apparently the agent asked only to act the gun didn't contain a magazine. Felicia's agent was ready downstairs to follow Dr. Sarah. Agent Kim looks nervous and gets into a car, and in that car there is a mysterious man. Agent Kim tells, and in a few minutes the president will pardon Schofield and Burrow. Finally, the mysterious man gave the file named Sona. What does it mean?
The gravity of what she's about.
Schofield calls Sarah and tells her whereabouts, and Sarah goes to pick her up. Schofield comes to joking, and he says he did it. Bro said, even though I had already prepared a boat ticket to escape. Schofield was watching the president's speech. The president is nervous about the arrival of Agent Kim, who says that it's not only Scoville who knows your secret, but we can also reveal your secret. You just choose to be exposed by Schofield or by us. The president thought about it and went up to the podium, and he gave a shocking statement. The president said, with a heavy heart I say that I have suffered from a deadly cancer. And I today resigned from the President of the United States. Everyone was shocked.
And because of that reason, in the best interest of this country, effective immediately.
And Schofield said that means we won't have any more pardons. And we don't have any more chances. We have to disappear forever. To be continued. The scene begins with a man who is ordered by Teabag to take his backpack. Teabag also got his backpack back. But it turned out that there were already Bellick and Sucker, and a chase took place. Teabag managed to escape. Schofield and Burrow are already on the ship and about to leave for Panama. Schofield calls Dr. Sarah and tells her to run away and disappear. Dr. Sarah was willing to come along. He came there immediately.
I just heard about the president. What does it mean? Is that with you?
Well, it's more of a freighter,
But the problem is that Dr. Sarah is being followed by the FBI. The scene changes. Sucker's sense of Bellick is now useless. But Sucker manages to grab Bellick's gun and threatens Bellick. But Bellick threatened back and said that if you kill me, then Maricruz will be killed too. Only I know where Maricruz is. I have kidnapped him. He is in a place where there is only enough food for 3 weeks. If Sucker wants to see Maricruz safe, then he must follow what Bellick says. Dr. Sarah saw a car following her because she didn't want the FBI to follow her to the pier. Sarah said to Schofield that I'm already on the boat. I'll be on board soon.
we're on deck.
Great.
Dr. Sarah also surrendered herself to the FBI. And finally, Dr. Sarah was arrested. Agent Mahan is annoyed that Dr. Sarah's arrest means she can't show where Schofield is. Schofield is worried that Dr. Sarah isn't on board. Burrow tries to calm Schofield too. We've come this far, we can't go back. Finally, Burrow and Schofield left for Panama. 1 week later, Agent Mahan appears stressed because he has not been able to catch Schofield and Burrow. Agent Weller brings his boss to meet with Franklin and gather information about the crimes Agent Mahan committed against Franklin. Franklin was reluctant to tell that Mahan's agent ordered him to commit suicide. But Franklin was promised to be free without conditions. Franklin finally opened his voice and was willing to be a witness. Back at Agent Mahan, he's researching Schofield's tattoo. And now he knows something. On the Schofield hard disk, there is a raw image of the tattoo with a Roman symbol that shows the alphabetical order. Agent Mahan now knows the order of the plot in Schofield's tattoo. And Omega is the last alphabet of the picture, showing the image of Christ on the flower. And the number 617. What does it mean?
Last letter of the Greek alphabet. Rose.
And these numbers, 617.
Could be biblical. Chapter 6, verse.
Sucker and Bellick come to the taxi company to investigate where did Teabag go. And they got their place. Finally, Schofield and Burrow arrived in Panama, and they immediately headed to the location indicated by the tattoo. At the office, the FBI is trying to decode the tattoo. Agent Mahon realizes something. The tattoo is a picture of Christ in a rose, or in English, Christ in a Rose or Christina Rose. Agent Mahon tries to check Schofield's CV and finds that Schofield's mother's name is Christina Rose, but Schofield's mother is dead. So what are they after in Panama? Agent Mahon also ordered to look for links between Schofield's mother in Panama, or search for her mother's grave perhaps in Panama.
But I thought she was dead.
Teabag left a hotel, but there was someone who recognized the face of the fugitive Teabag. Finally, Teabag was chased. Schofield and Burrow arrive at a shop and greet the shop owner. The mother gave a letter and said this is Christina Rose. Then, Schofield, worried about Dr. Sarah, tries to call him, but Burrow stops him.
Making a phone call. You can't.
Agent Kim informs Agent Mahon that not only is Franklin not dead, but he will even be released. Agent Mahon also suspects Agent Weller, who is not in the office. Agent Kim meets a mysterious man on the boat. This man finally wants to talk, because he is in a safe place free from eavesdropping. The agent reports that Schofield is most likely in Panama, and the man orders him to go after him. Agent Weller met with Agent Mahon at basement, and Agent Mahon said, "I know you are a traitor. I know that you're the one who freed Franklin, and took info on me and reported it to the higher-ups." Agent Weller says, "You killed David, John Abruzzi. Crazy, even I know you killed Oscar Shales." Agent Mahon says this is what work is called. Don't let people turn you into a bad person. Mahon's agent left from there. The scene changes. Franklin has a secret guest to tell. Franklin refuses to meet the guest, and it turns out that the guests are his own wife and children. It looks like they are seen very happy. Franklin is now free and clear of a criminal track record. The FBI boss also said that he would guarantee the safety of his family if you did help to witness the crime of Agent Mahon. Franklin agreed. Agent Mahon cleans up the files in his room and seems to want to leave, but he is caught by Agent Kim. Agent Kim says, "You got your last assignment. Once this is done, then you will be relieved. And the final mission is that you have to go to Panama." Agent Felicia called Agent Mahon, and he reported that 4 months ago Schofield bought a boat called Christian Rose. Schofield and Burrow arrived at the pier.
Yeah, she's not the real thing, but
Sucker gets a call from the taxi company that Teabag is in Panama. They immediately go there. The scene shifts to Teabag. It looks like he is being watched by a spy. So the Teabag was caught at the hotel, and he is now ordered to do something there. Teabag pretended as if nothing had happened. On board, Schofield checks the website he promised to communicate with Sucker, and there was a message from Sucker that said, "Hi Schofield, I'm in Panama and I found Teabag in a Hotel Fin del Camino." Schofield feels guilty for letting the Teabag roam free and killing so many victims there. Schofield says Teabag can be a lingering sin for me. As long as Teabag kills, then the sin will hit me. Before we go to disappear on this ship, I want to catch Teabag first, but the Burrow forbids it. We have to go first. When the time is right, then we will return. Schofield understands. The scene shifted. It turned out that Mahon's agent was the one who sent the message that Teabag was in Panama. He disguised himself as a sucker. Back on the ship, when Burrow was about to call Schofield, he was surprised because Schofield was not there. He finally tried to find Schofield there but couldn't. And tried to read the message and followed him there. The scene changed, but he looked uneasy with what he was doing. He was lured to be free if he followed directions from an FBI. That's why he wanted to do it. So this Teabag is used as bait so Schofield can get out. Schofield arrived at the hotel, and it was true that he found there was a Teabag there. Schofield also remembers his past for the sins committed by Teabag. Smart Schofield. He didn't rush into the hotel. He wanted to check if there were spies accompanying him. The scene changed. Agent Mahon had arrived in Panama and immediately headed to the Trap Hotel. On the way, he called his wife and said soon I would go home and our lives would return to normal.
I have one more thing to do.
Back at the hotel, there was a continuous gunshot there, and it turned out to be just firecrackers. So it was Schofield who ordered the little boy to find out how many FBI members were there. As Schofield was walking, he suddenly met Sucker, and how surprised he was when there was a Bellick pointing a gun there. Schofield asked Sucker for the message on the website, but Sucker said, "I never opened any website." Schofield realized he was being framed. Now they are trying to work together. To catch Teabag, Bellick gets the money. Sucker gets his girlfriend, and Schofield gets the teabag to turn over to the police. In the end, they devised a strategy. Dr. Sarah, who had been arrested, was finally brought to trial, and the only proof of his innocence is a podcast recording from Schofield. That Dr. Sarah had nothing to do with Schofield's escape mission, said Schofield himself. The scene shifts to Agent Kellerman, who seems to be preparing something with his gun. Back to the hotel, Bellick set off the fire alarm in the building and made everyone out, including Teabag. Teabag walked to a place and was followed by the FBI agent, then Schofield. Bellick and Sucker followed him from behind. It turned out that Agent Mahon had arrived at the place and followed him too. But suddenly he got a welcome greeting from the borough, and they fought. The fight was won by Burrow, who managed to point his gun at Agent Mahon. Teabag entered a place that had been ordered by the FBI, and the FBI was waiting outside. Bellick tried to ask them something to distract him, and Sucker came with his gun pointed, then brought the FBI member back. Agent Kellerman appeared to be wearing his uniform before when he was on duty, with many awards and medals obtained. It turns out that Agent Kellerman, who was confused because his idol, the president's mother, has now resigned as president, he finally decided to commit suicide. The scene shifts to his younger brother Kellerman. He gets news about his brother. Back in Schofield, Schofield learns that the man they arrested was not a member of the FBI but a member of a company disguised as the FBI. In the end, the two men were tied up there. They also left him and immediately chased the teabag. Arriving upstairs, Bellick opened the door, and it turned out that Teabag was already there and just gave up. However, the police heard that they had arrived, and Bellick asks where the money backpack is. Teabag says it's behind the door. Sucker tried to check it but found that there was a woman's body. Teabag ran out. Turns out it was a trap. The door couldn't be opened from the inside. Bellick and Schofield tried to break down the door, but there was a Teabag who responded with a gun that shot Bellick's leg. Teabag was about to run away with his money. He was hit by a car and he was caught by Schofield. On the other hand, Bellick was arrested by the police because it was suspected that he was the one who killed the woman. Teabag was taken to a quiet place, and Schofield said, "I'd turn you over to the police." On the other hand, Sucker is looking for a stolen car and he manages to find it. The scene changed. Kellerman's sister was shocked to see her brother's condition, but luckily his brother wasn't dead. Kellerman said the gun jammed and failed to kill himself. The sister said there must be a God's intention to still give you a chance to live. Kellerman finally came to his senses. Sucker came and immediately took the teabag into the car to be handed over to the police. Back to Dr. Sarah. Her lawyer said that the lightest sentence for you was 12 years. Dr. Sarah was surprised to hear that. Burrow, who managed to catch Agent Mahon, said, "Your life is now on the edge." Agent Mahon said, "Lucky to have fugitives like you for keeping a man like myself working."
A couple of things in this world I'm good at.
Back in Schofield, Sucker keeps an eye on Teabag with his gun pointed the whole way. But here Teabag is trying to take the screwdriver that is below. Sucker, who was not focused on keeping the teabag, finally had to be willing to be stabbed in the chest by the teabag. Schofield immediately slammed his car down. Schofield immediately helps Sucker. On the one hand, Teabag escapes carrying a duffel bag filled with money. Schofield also asked someone for help and chased Teabag, who ran into the forest. Teabag managed to get into the house and took the knife there. Schofield closed the door and broke the glass bottle there.
Is that it, really?
Schofield challenges Teabag to a fight.
We're good.
And the fight was won by Schofield. The scene changes. Dr. Sarah attends the follow-up trial. Lawyer says if you want your sentence to be light, you just have to admit what you did. And you will be jailed at least 12 years. And if you behave well, you only run 9 years. Dr. Sarah was resigned to the sentence. But suddenly someone came and said, "Congrats, Sarah, you got a new witness." And it turned out that the witness was Agent Kellerman. The police entered the forest, and it turned out that he got a teabag who was in pain asking for help. Schofield manages to catch Teabag and take the money over his head. However, when he arrives on the ship, Yes can't find her brother there. Schofield also tried to call his brother. And to his surprise, it was Agent Mahon who picked up the phone. So it turns out that the one who won the fight was Agent Mahon.
Or I swear to God, I'll blow your head clean off.
And the one who was handcuffed was Burrow. Schofield said, "What do you want?" Agent Mahon said, "I know you brought the $5 million. If you want your brother to be free, take the money with your ship." Schofield is confused about how to save his brother. But there is a hawker who offers drinks and marijuana. Schofield chases him away. He continued his call with Agent Mahon. Agent Mahon says, "Now my boss knows my crime and will jail me. Now I am a fugitive like you. That's why I want the ship to escape." Mahon's agent told him the location of the meeting, on the other side of the beach, which was quite far away. Schofield agrees and will go there.
Just two guys doing each other a favor.
At trial, Kellerman's agent testified that he was a former presidential guard, and he admitted that he had engineered Stedman's death and slandered Burrow as the culprit, and his testimony was corroborated by documentary evidence and recordings. Finally, the plaintiff said, "I dropped the lawsuit against Dr. Sarah. Now she's blown away. In exchange, I will sue you, Agent Kellerman." Agent Kellerman was arrested. Sarah didn't know what to say to Agent Kellerman.
As I had orders to kill her.
Agent Mahon tells Agent Kim that he's caught Burrow and orders Agent Kim to come here immediately. Schofield gives a voice message to Dr. Sarah that even if she runs away, she won't be happy if she runs away without you. Dr. Sarah suddenly went viral because she didn't get a prison sentence. When she was about to leave the building, she heard that the convict was dead. Lincoln Burrow has been acquitted and now he is innocent. Dr. Sarah immediately called Schofield, but Schofield missed it. Dr. Sarah wanted to immediately follow him to Panama right then and there.
Okay, I gotta go to him.
What's that about?
Mahon's agent called his wife and asked her to take a vacation to Panama. His wife tried to think about it. Sucker is already in the hospital and has been treated, but he seems weak from lack of blood. He who could not keep Maricruz in captivity immediately went to look for him by finding the whereabouts of Bellic. Bellic is now being held in a prison on charges of murder. And Bellic is happy because Teabag was put in the same prison. The hawkers approached the Children's Association Hits Panama and took Schofield there. The teenager was angry at the hawkers because they thought Schofield was a cop. Schofield says, "I'm not a cop." You try when Michael Schofield on Google and they are surprised that Schofield is worth $100,000. And Schofield offered a bill that was over $100,000. What offer is that? back to the prison Bellic called by the guards there, and he will be transferred to prison. Sucker looks at the transferred Bellic and says, "Where is Maricruz?" Bellic says, "Free me from here, then you will get Maricruz." Sucker, who was exhausted, finally fainted. Finally, Schofield arrived at the dock where he had an appointment with Agent Mahon and hid his bag outside. Schofield went inside.
I don't think my mother would have approved of you.
And Agent Mahon searched him. Mahon's agent said, "From now on the company wants you alive. Why? Find out the reason yourself." Agent Mahon tells Agent Kim that he's already inside. Go inside. Then Agent Mahon called the police and said, "I found the body of an Asian murdered by 2 American men." So Agent Mahon wants to kill Agent Kim on the spot and slander Burrow and Schofield. Agent Kim arrives, and suddenly Agent Mahon points his gun at Agent Kim. But Agent Kim's men go inside. The Burrow manages to escape and a gunfight ensues. Burrow and Schofield manage to escape. And Agent Mahon tries to escape on his ship. Agent Kellerman, who had been named a suspect, was finally put in a car and taken to be transferred to prison. But their car suddenly stopped because it broke down.
Alright, I'll check it out.
In French resistance, it was considered a high honor.
And it turns out that there was a man sent by Kellerman's agent who opened fire on the car. Agent Mahon arrives at another dock to refuel, and there was a police raid. The Agent Mahon's ship was checked, and how shocked he was when the police found cocaine on the ship. Agent Mahon was surprised. So it was Schofield who planned to frame Agent Mahon to be caught by the police. The hawker meets with Schofield, returns and shows him a ship that Schofield has bought.
We had the deal. Money you gave me.
That'll work.
And what was surprising was that Dr. Sarah was there. Dr. Sarah got Schofield's voicemail and immediately followed to Schofield's place. Dr. Sarah also informed that the Burrow is now free, and Schofield will be tried to be free. That means we don't have to run anymore. But suddenly Agent Kim came and pointed his gun at them. Burrow handed over the $5 million knapsack as a bribe. But Agent Kim said, "This little money means nothing to me." He kicked it so it fell into the water. But when Agent Kim was about to shoot Burrow, Agent Kim was shot, and it was Dr. Sarah's doing. Agent Kim was killed. The police came and they immediately left from there. Burrow parted ways with Schofield and Sarah. Schofield finally hid in a house. But the police had surrounded him there. In the end, Schofield said to Dr. Sarah, "It was time for us to turn ourselves into them and tell them the truth." Dr. Sarah hands the gun to Schofield and they get out. But when Schofield came out, suddenly Dr. Sarah took hostage. He acted so that only Schofield was caught and Sarah was the only victim. Agent Mahon, who had been arrested by the police, called his wife and said, "Cancel the vacation to Panama and forget about me. Pretend I never existed." Teabag has a visitor from the company and collects his promise that he will be freed from the crime of Fox River. But it turns out the company lied and left the Teabag there. The scene changed to a prison, where Schofield was dropped off there, followed by Agent Mahon, who got out of his car. It turns out that Schofield and Agent Mahon will be imprisoned in the same place. Schofield goes into prison, and it turns out that the prison is called SONA. Schofield also saw that the prison conditions there were very different from the conditions of the Fox River prison. Mystery Man gets word that Schofield is in jail and says, "Schofield will definitely run away again. That's the skill. That's what we want." How barbaric the behavior of the prisoners there. And it turns out that Bellic is in the same prison. And the movie is end.